Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is our co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It's Season 3, Episode 64. We have a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to be talking Steelers-Bengals up ahead of this final regular season game. The Steelers looking to finish at 9-6-1 with a chance of making the playoffs, but as we know, they're going to need the Cleveland Browns to defeat the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore at the same time on Sunday for the Steelers to make it in. So I brought my friend John Gehring from 89.1 The Point back on the show, and we talked a little bit about the Browns and Ravens game that's going to be going on. So we'll stick that interview in here as well, so we're going to have that play a little bit later. But first, there's some Steelers news to get to, as there typically is this time of year, but kind of news we kind of expected to see earlier this season, probably should have been done earlier this season, has now been done today. Right before the Steelers' Week 17 finale, the Steelers placed kicker Chris Boswell on injured reserve with an undisclosed injury, and Matt McCrane, a player the Steelers brought in for tryouts a few weeks ago, was signed to take his place. McCrane has played in only 4 games in his short NFL career. He is 5 of 9 on kicks this season and is 8 for 8 in PATs. What was your initial reaction to this?
I don't really understand why. Why this week? Like, this was after coming off a game where Boswell was 4 for 4 on all his kicks, including a 49-yard field goal, and then, 2 PATs. So, this to me is, the absolute worst time. You stuck with him through all the bad. You should have done this earlier. And then as soon as he finally has a good game, you're like, shut down, you're done. This doesn't make sense to me. I understand, everyone needs to understand, I've been hating on Chris Boswell since, week 6. I was early on this hot take train, but, this move to me, at this point, does not make sense. It really doesn't. And it really is about coming off that game where he was actually doing good. He hit all 4 of his kicks. If they wanted to kill the guy's confidence anymore, they just did it. Oh, you hit all your kicks? Yeah, we're shutting you down anyway because we don't trust in you. That was probably the end of Chris Boswell. I don't understand really why, but we'll see what happens after this. I mean, maybe McCrane has been playing like a god at his home. I don't know. What do you think of this move?
The only good thing I can say about McCrane is we didn't really know a whole lot about Chris Boswell beforehand. It wasn't like Boswell was this super cool kid that was, lighting things up before. He was a guy that had also been cut. So we'll see. But I really do question the timing of this, considering Boswell, as you mentioned, just had probably his best game of the season. If he's getting any sort of confidence boost, you've just shattered that with this move. And frankly, as you said, it should have been done weeks ago, before he in part cost you games against the Chargers and against the Raiders. It's not good enough. And this is, in essence, closing the barn door after the horse has escaped. So, what good is this doing now? I don't know. The timing is very bizarre, and it really falls to management. It really falls to management and Kevin Colbert, and really the Rooney family as well for allowing this to continue as long as it did. But I guess the worst chapter in Chris Boswell's career has come to an end. We'll talk a little bit about his future later, but I wanted to get through that first. A rather embarrassing moment for the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coordinator Keith Butler, who has endured a few years of embarrassments himself. He was asked, quite frankly, a stupid question, in my opinion, on the coach's corner that the Steelers have coordinator's corner interview that they have for Steelers.com every week. And a question was asked about Tyler Eifert, the Bengals tight end, and he said he was basically asked a question regarding kind of how good he thought Tyler Eifert was in comparison to the other great tight ends in the league, and he said he kind of answered it with the generic answer, except he said at the end, he's going to be a problem for us to cover. In that moment, it seems Butler forgot that Eifert has not played a snap of football since September. So, look, I'm sure it was just kind of like a brain fart kind of thing. And when you think about it, they have been watching tape of these guys all season to see like their tendencies and whatnot. But this is this really just the optics on this is not good at all.
No, this is way worse than Stephen A. Smith. At least Stephen A. Smith could say, yeah, I have to look at 32 NFL teams and talk about every game. Keith Butler has one team to look forward to every week. It's kind of rough. We were just making fun of Stephen A. Smith like 2 podcasts ago. This was really, really bad. And he couldn't even be like, oh, I meant Tyler Croft, because Tyler Croft is on IR as well. Oh, I meant Tyler Boyd. Well, Tyler Boyd's on IR as well. They were talking about tight ends anyway, but regardless, just so stupid.
Yeah, not one of those things you really want to see. I thought it was a little bit of a bigger deal that's being blown out of proportion a bit, but at the same time, you have to be a little more coordinated in what you're thinking and what you're saying when you're communicating to this wide of an audience, and obviously it was not a good look at all. Let's move on to the Steelers. They voted for their team MVP, the players did earlier this week, and they decided that Juju Smith-Schuster, the wide receiver, is the team's MVP. Now, for whatever reason, a lot of people are taking issue with the fact that it's not Ben Roethlisberger, and I guess first we need to talk about kind of the nature of what an MVP award is, Austin, and why, it's typically a quarterback award in the NFL. Is that the fact that, typically quarterbacks are the most valuable player on any team. That's how football works. But I think personally, I would believe that the Steelers kind of already know this. So they instead use this award in a way to kind of shed light on great performances by other players. Because as we know, Roethlisberger has won the team MVP award just once in his career.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sold on it even being Ben Roethlisberger in the first place. Like, I get it, he's throwing for like a close to historic amount of yards, but like he's still throwing a lot of interceptions to make up for it. Like, he's playing average. Last game was really good, but besides that, like, I would have made an argument for Antonio Brown to win MVP before Ben Roethlisberger, probably because Antonio Brown has 15 touchdowns. That's the top of the league for that. And I understand he has about 90 less yards than Juju on only 2 less catches. But I don't know. Like, Ben's numbers don't really impress me all too much. Like, compared to how many times he attempted to throw the ball. Like, I completely understand why they chose Juju, because, he's leading the team in receptions and yards. So, and he has a 97-yard touchdown, of course. But I don't know. I think if I were to pick, I would have still picked Antonio Brown, regardless, because Juju Smith-Schuster hasn't been perfect either. Neither has Antonio Brown. But I don't know. Having 15 touchdowns to me is still incredible. So I probably, if I were given the choice, it probably would have been Antonio Brown with Juju Smith-Schuster, the runner-up. But that's just me, I suppose.
It's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of argument here because, obviously you can't have a quarterback throwing for 5,000 yards without, in this case, 2 receivers that are over 1,000 yards. And you can't have 2 receivers, going over 1,000 yards if you don't have a quarterback that's throwing for 5,000 yards. You kind of see what I'm getting at here. I think a lot is being put on this, and it's not that big of a deal. The players did it. The players voted, and they did it because he's a really good guy in the locker room, and he really had a fantastic season. Obviously, the fumble against the Saints aside, I really don't think it's that big of a deal, and for whatever reason, people just want to complain about it, and people have an agenda against Smith-Schuster, which I think is kind of ridiculous, but for whatever reason, they feel the need to try to bring him down a peg, or they think that Ben Roethlisberger really was deserving, and in some sense he is, but for all the great numbers he has put up, I can't ignore the fact that he leads the league in interceptions and red zone interceptions. So for all the great he's done, he's also hurt the team as well. Regardless, I think it's being talked about way too much.
I agree. They probably should have picked David DeCastro. David DeCastro hasn't done anything wrong all season at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that either, but I guess the players aren't going to do that. I hope that'll change someday, though, because maybe they'd do that to just quiet people out on the outside. But regardless, no matter who the MVP of this team is, they're going to need to play well against, yes, a depleted Bengals squad, but make no mistake, this is a must-win game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're not going to be at full strength, it looks like, Austin.
No, they will not be. The Steelers are going to be having a few guys questionable and one guy doubtful. Starting with the guys expected to play, James Conner and Sean Davis are questionable. Conner practiced in full all week, while Sean Davis logged a full practice on Friday, so both of those guys look like they're going to play. The more concerning guy marked as questionable is Antonio Brown. He had a knee injury. He was given Wednesday off as a coach's decision. He came back and then had a knee injury and didn't practice on Thursday, and he also was held out Friday. He is officially questionable, but not logging a practice all week is concerning. Then finally, Vince Williams is doubtful with a toe injury, so expect Ford and Bostic to get more reps together. Moving to the other side for the Bengals, Tyler Boyd, Drake Kirkpatrick, and Jordan Evans were put on injured reserve early Friday, so they're all going to be out, obviously. Then Fontes Burfict has been ruled out with a concussion, and supposedly his career is in jeopardy after suffering his 7th concussion of his career, and this is the 2nd this month. So, I mean, I bet the whole league is going to be very boo-hooey about this very beloved player. But anyway, the final one they have on their injury report is cornerback Tony McRae. He has a hamstring injury and he has been ruled out. They have no other injuries. Everyone that they have is just ruled out. So that's the injury report.
So with Burfict likely to miss this game, I have to figure that he's not going to play. I wouldn't think that they're going to put him in jeopardy like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. What do you mean?
I was saying he has been ruled out. I wasn't sure if Burfict had been ruled out not yet or not.
Yeah, that's why you confused me. I was like, he's been ruled out. He's not playing.
Okay, that must have happened today then.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, because I went to the Steelers injury report and they had him as ruled out.
My apologies. I was not up to date on my information there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Antonio Brown downgraded to doubtful, to be honest with you. I don't think he plays in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he plays. I think questionable is just kind of being hopeful.
And we did see that change with James Conner before, I think it was the Patriots game, so don't be surprised to see that soon as well. All right, let's get into the game, and this is probably going to be a shorter preview of the game itself than we typically have, just because of the fact that there really isn't a ton to say. The Bengals are a team that was once, what were they, like 4-1, 5-2, and now they're 6-9?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they started 5-2.
And they obviously led the AFC North for a while, and now they're in the basement, and they've had just a horrible, horrible last few months here. And really it starts with their defense. Their defense is a historically bad defense right now. Not only are they worst in the league in yards against and points against, they also have the worst third down defense in NFL history right now. They're giving up 50% of their third down chances, and it's kind of ridiculous when you think about how good this team's defenses were just a few years ago and all the names they have up there. I mean, the front four is pretty much the same. You've got Carlos Dunlap, Michael Johnson, Geno Atkins. Andrew Billings is a solid nose tackle too. But none of these guys are really just producing the way they normally are. Geno Atkins has been solid, but I mean, Johnson hasn't been that good. Dunlap has been okay. Sam Hubbard has been a solid rotational guy. He's kind of taken the place of Carl Lawson, who I believe is on IR, if I'm not mistaken. And they've been okay up there. You still worry about those guys getting a decent pass rush, but I mean, at the end of the day, this front four is not the feared unit it once was.
100%. Like in the first game, I remember coming in like, wow, this defense is still pretty good. Geno Atkins has 6.5 sacks through only a few amount of games, and then Geno Atkins just kind of disappeared after that. The Steelers allowed 0 sacks in that first game, and then like the entire defensive line just broke down. I don't know what happened. That was like the one thing they had going for them early on, and they're not even getting the sacks anymore. Like it's just their defense really fell apart, and I don't know what to blame it on for that. Maybe the Steelers just disrupted them so bad that they weren't able to get the sacks anymore. I don't really know, because it was literally it was at that game where they stopped getting the sacks. But regardless, I really just feel like the team as a whole has suffered from so many injuries. I mean, you look at like all the guys that they have lost this year. They lost Drake Kirkpatrick, which was one of their starting cornerbacks. They lost Josh Tapau, who was their backup offensive tackle. They lost Adolphus Washington, another backup defensive tackle. They lost Vontaze Burfict for this game, and they had Vontaze Burfict miss a few other games with his concussion. They just lost his backup, Jordan Evans. So now they're going to be starting Vincent Ray. And I mean, Vincent Ray, I don't even know who his backup technically is right now, because they had 4 linebackers, middle linebackers on the roster, and behind Vincent Ray was Malik Jefferson, and Malik Jefferson's on IR. So I'm really not sure who's playing behind him. I guess it's literally just Nick Vigil and Vincent Ray. I mean, I actually didn't see who they elevated today. I'm pretty sure it was only a wide receiver, a running back, and then an offensive lineman, though. So, like, according to their depth chart on ESPN, they don't even have they don't have anyone besides Vincent Ray and Nick Vigil.
Awesome.
I think I said they were middle linebackers. I'm sorry, they're not middle linebackers. They don't have outside linebackers. It's just they're really messed up, and if they have an injury, unless ESPN's wrong here, they don't have anyone else. They're down to the scraps. And that's probably what's hurting them. That's probably what's hurting them the most. They just can't beat the injury bug. They can't rest guys because they can't rest any of the linebackers. It's just completely they're completely messed up. And they like, even when they try to add guys like linebacker Jordan Evans, he's on IR now. Like he isn't. They tried fixing these problems. I didn't even mention Preston Brown. Preston Brown's also got injured. They've just been so hurt. It's just really rough for them. But I mean, even before then, they weren't even that good of a defense, because in the starting 4 games or the starting 5 games, they were already at the bottom for yards per game, like giving up and stuff. They were already giving up so many yards per game, and it just got worse for them because of these injuries. And that's really what I think. I feel like coming in, the Steelers offense should have their way. I mean, you look at it, and I mean, they still got 2 good. There's 2 guys I look at, and I think these guys are still pretty good, and that's William Jackson. William Jackson has done really well against Antonio Brown in the past, and I mean, Antonio Brown is likely not playing, so he's likely going to go against Juju Smith-Schuster, but I like his matchup because William Jackson, I think we've seen some good things out of. And then Jesse Bates. I really love Jesse Bates. I think John looked at him pre-draft, and he's developed exactly how the Bengals have wanted to. He's probably been one of their best defensive players because he was projected a first-round pick, late first round, and he went like mid-second round. So, I mean, the Bengals are probably happy. I really wish the Steelers got Jesse Bates. No offense to Terrell Edmonds. I mean, it's going to take another year to really look at these guys, how they're going to be going forward. But really, that's it. The William Jackson and Jesse Bates is it. Geno Atkins is still there, but Geno Atkins is not the same Geno Atkins that started this year with 6.5 sacks through, I think, 4 games it was, or 5 games. It's just, I don't know. I really don't know. He's got 10 sacks now, but like that slowdown is significant to me. What do you have to say about the Bengals defense? There's really not much to say about them. They're a really bad unit. How did they fall apart?
Well, let me back it up a bit then, since we had been talking about their defensive line. You got into their linebackers. Yeah, they're not very good right now. They're all injured, banged up. But even when they were healthy, this was just not a talented unit, and they're really not athletic at all. Typically, you talk about the Steelers, and they're not a team that runs the football up the middle. This is one of those games where I think that you can actually run to the outside with relative success against this team. you really don't have to worry a ton about the Bengals' defensive line as far as run stoppers. Running against the 4-3 can be difficult, but the linebackers, I think this is the worst linebacker group in football, and I think you'll have a pretty good chance. I mean, do you think they'll have any trouble really running the football here?
I can't imagine so. I mean, like, all their linebackers are basically backups at this point, and they basically can't rest any of their guys, any of their linebackers. So they're just in trouble. I feel like James Conner, even though coming back, should be able to rush against them. Even if they give James Conner like a rest package and let Jalen Samuels take over here, I have full faith in Jalen Samuels to rush against this already statistically bad defense.
And you want to, here's something else that just tells you how bad the front has been, is that listen to this. There are 5 safeties in the NFL that have 100 tackles this season. 2 of the 5 play for the Bengals, and that's obviously Sean Williams and Jesse Bates. And Bates, as when I went over in pre-draft, he was not a downhill kind of guy. He was more of a coverage guy. He wasn't really a guy to stick his nose in there, but he's had to. He hasn't had a choice.
And that's just absolutely terrible. It's really bad. It's how bad the defensive line has played against the run, and then how bad the linebackers have performed against just everything. The linebackers haven't done good for anything this year because of who they've had to start, really.
To quote the old, the late Billy Mays, but wait, there's more. Jarquez Denard has the 5th most tackles of any cornerback this year, and he's a slot cornerback that doesn't play in base defense. So what does that tell you?
Oh, it tells me they've been really, really, really bad. It just adds to the we're not good at coverage, and we don't have good plays to stop anything, is what that tells me.
So essentially, what I'm doing, if I'm Randy Fichtner and the Steelers offense, I'm doing everything. But later in the game, when the Bengals are going to be trying to get to the end of their season, just try to stay healthy, I'm rolling out David DeCastro and Ramon Foster. I'm pulling them. I'm sending them along the edge, and I'm trying to get them to match up with the defensive back because they're going to want no business of taking on those blocks and tackling James Conner. So I'm going to want to attack them that way. I think anything under 28 points is considered a pretty big disappointment here.
I would agree. You have to get at least 4 touchdowns because this unit has just been so bad.
And shockingly enough, we just crapped all over the Bengals defense. Their offense is the better unit, but you look at all the injuries they have on that side, you might question us, but I mean, my goodness, man. Let's just start with the offensive line. I mean, their left side is okay. Clint Bowling is a pretty good offensive lineman, their left guard. Cordy Glenn, the left tackle, is past his prime. The right side, and Alex Redmond and Bobby Hart. Oh, man, these guys are not good. They're having a bad season, both of them. And first-round pick Billy Price has had a lot to handle this year, and he hasn't played up to the standard either. This is just not an offensive line that they're lacking confidence and ability right now.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. They're just not. It's that one side that you harped on. Just Bobby Hart, not very good. I mean, if you're taking a former Giant offensive lineman, you're basically you know where this happened. The Giants have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and Bobby Hart is a former New York Giant. But regardless, they're going to have a tough time in this matchup going against the Steelers' number 1 sack defense. I believe. Oh, actually, the Steelers might have lost that. The Steelers are either tied with the Chiefs or they're right behind the Chiefs. But still, whether it's the first or second, that's just pedantics. This is not going to be a good game for the Cincinnati offensive line because they're just not that good.
Yeah, I really don't see how the Steelers' defensive line doesn't control this game in any aspect. I mean, I know C.J. Uzama is a good blocking tight end, but still, at the end of the day, even only Clint Bowling is the only guy I really would have any concerns about. And then if you ever had concerns about their playmakers, they're mostly gone. I mean, Tyler Boyd is on IR. Obviously, A.J. Green has been on IR for a decent amount of the season. Andy Dalton is on IR. This is a different offense with Jeff Driscoll. He's a lot more mobile than Andy Dalton is, but he can't really throw it deep. He's only completed 2 deep passes to anyone that's not Tyler Boyd this season. And it's basically Joe Mixon, because you look at their top receiver now, it's John Ross. And mind you, he's having a very weird year. Have you seen his stat line?
No, I actually have not.
So John Ross, you remember he was the big speedster coming out of college, right?
Yep.
So he's caught 20 passes for just 209 yards, which is a 10.5 yard, just about a 10.5 yard per catch kind of thing, only along with 39 yards. But 7 of those catches have gone for touchdowns.
That's so weird. Like that's a pretty high touchdown percentage. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's very weird. So you've got a bunch of young guys like Josh Malone, Auden Tate, and Cody Core at receiver with John Ross now. So those are the top receivers. You've got Uzama at tight end. And it's basically just, I think it's going to have to be a lot of Joe Mixon and Giovanni Bernard, because Jeff Driscoll is basically only going to be able to move the football with the dink and dunk offense. I mean, he really doesn't put any fear into you at all.
Yeah, they really just they don't have the wide receivers. Even if he could complete it, like I remember when the Bengals drafted John Ross, I was so happy. I wanted the Ravens to draft John Ross because they still had Brashad Perriman and their wide receivers were bad. Because I didn't have any faith in John Ross because he was mostly like you said, a speedster. He ran like one of the fastest. I think he did run the fastest 40 time. And I just thought that was it. I thought that was all that would be to him. And I thought that he would be like another Brashad Perriman. Which, I mean, with that touchdown percentage, that's pretty good, but only 20 catches is not that good. So he's also been hurt so much. So I guess that's part of it. But I don't think he's that good. I feel like he was drafted for his speed, and he had to be developed, and the Bengals were not the team to develop him. And then like you said, they only have like Cody Core, Josh Malone, Alex Erickson, who's mostly a special teams kind of guy. Like none of those guys are good. Like they had really good wide receivers coming out with the former Pitt product Tyler Boyd, and then obviously A.J. Green's been a force in the league for a while. It's just now they're just decimated. And then you throw in the fact that they don't have Andy Dalton anymore, and I mean Andy Dalton isn't like a top-tier quarterback, but I obviously he's better than Jeff Driscoll. It's just this offense has to rely on Joe Mixon to be scary right now. They don't have any playmakers besides Joe Mixon. So, like, what if a team can take away Joe Mixon, the team's got nothing.
Yeah, and really I think their best weapon besides him is Giovanni Bernard, and we know that teams rarely have 2 running backs in the backfield at the same time. The Bengals will run probably 5 to 10 plays where they're both on the field. But, I mean, other than that, it's just don't let John Ross beat you deep. And I really don't see, especially because we already outlined how big of a mismatch the Steelers' defensive line over the Bengals' offensive line is. I really don't see why the Steelers can't have a huge day on defense, force some big turnovers. And I think T.J. Watt personally is going to have a huge day. I think him against Bobby Hart, oh, Lord have mercy.
See, I thought that last time, and then I was disappointed. I really hope so. I hope this time, because I remember coming into this one, I was like, oh, T.J. Watt's going to absolutely destroy Bobby Hart, and then it just didn't happen. So I do hope that this is the time that it does.
That's true. Hopefully the momentum he has produced with the great play this past month will continue to translate. Special teams, man, it always feels like the Steelers just don't have the advantage in special teams, especially lately. Randy Bullock has been a solid kicker for the Bengals. We'll see kind of what Matt McCrane does. I don't really have many expectations for him. Alex Erickson, I mentioned this before the last game. He's a dangerous returner, especially on kickoffs, and he had a long kickoff return against the Steelers in that earlier game this season. I'm concerned about him, and of course, Kevin Huber is still the punter. He can uncork them with the rest of them.
Yeah, I feel like Alex Erickson is one of the top returners in the league, and that's who I'm looking at mostly because I feel like out of everyone on their team, he is also very dangerous. Like, I could see him running back for a score on this team. I mean, it's kind of disappointing when you look at kick returning. Ryan Switzer was never really a kick returner, and it's showing he really doesn't have that good of an average. I think he's averaging 20 yards per return right now, and it's just a complete mismatch compared to the Bengals, where they're near the top of the league for average kick returns. I think they're number 5 with 25.2 yards per kick return. So then you look at the Steelers, and they're all the way at 31 with 19. They're not even at 20. They're at 19 yards per kick return. And it's not very good. And obviously we know the kicker problems, but I mean, now we have a new kicker named Matt McCrane, so we'll see how he performs and if he could keep up. And that's really it. I mean, Huber hasn't been that good this season, in my opinion, but like you said, he could still uncork it if need be. He's sort of having a season like Barry, where he's like hit or miss. I feel like I feel I want to see what their net average is, but yeah, I really don't think it's just the Steelers are like the 30th ranked special teams in my mind. Altogether, if you put them all together, they're like at 30, 29, 28 maybe. And then it's just going to leave for most teams to be in front of them, no matter how bad they are. Because Steelers are bad in multiple areas on special teams. They get the penalties. They've been inconsistent punting. They haven't been good kicking. They're just not a very good special teams team.
So who do you blame more for the fault of the kick return unit? Because Switzer did return 24 kicks last season, and he averaged 25 yards a kick return, and this year he's averaging 5 whole yards less.
I notice a lot that Ryan Switzer makes a lot of poor decisions. I don't know if this is a new thing, but I feel like at least some of the blame on him is on him regressing a little bit this year, because there's some times where I'm like, why are you not running that out? Like, there's tons of space, and then there's other times where, like, he's running out and there's like already a guy at like the 24. And you're like, why are you running this out? But regardless, maybe you got to blame some of it on penalties too. I mean, it's the most penalized special teams unit. I don't know how that's something interesting. I don't know how that works. Maybe do penalties? Do you still, if you were to run out a kick to the 25 and then there's a penalty and it brought it back to the 15, does that mean you got a 15-yard kick return, or is that? Or do you get a 25-yard kick return, and that was and there was just a penalty?
I'm gonna have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it counts as just a 15. Like if it's a 25-yard return and there's like holding, I think it's just 15 yards.
Then that's 100% the reason why I think Ryan Switzer's down that much as well. Because I mean, this special teams unit is one of the most penalized in the league, and that's 100% why I would think it's that low. That combined with him a little bit of regressing was making some stupid decisions. Why do you think it's down so much?
This has just been a recurring problem we've seen with the Steelers. And, for whatever reason, Danny Smith's units have just not been able to block for their kick returners. And yes, Switzer makes questionable decisions, but he has a track record of success in Dallas. And the fact that he has struggled so much here, it leads me to pin almost 3/4 or 4/5 of the blame on the coaching in this aspect, or really the return unit itself, because it's not just a guy, as we know. It's a unit working together, and they have not been good enough. And that's really all there is to it. I mean, I feel like Switzer has been a nice addition, but it's more than just the returner himself. It's not just him out there. The Steelers, again, continue to struggle with it, and it's just, I don't know when they're going to get better with it too, because it has been some time. I don't remember the last time the Steelers had a good kick returner.
It really has been a while. Ryan Switzer's a good punt returner. I'll give him that. It's just, for some reason, kick returns are a whole different story.
All right. I did remember one other thing. Check out on SteelersDepot.com if you haven't seen this, Austin. There was an article about how the Steelers have the worst starting field position of any team in football. Their average starting field position is the 26-yard line. which is last in the NFL, and the Steelers, you know what's amazing about that is the Steelers are still one of the top offensive teams in the league, which tells me that they've needed every yard that they've gotten.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. I'm seeing the article now, and it really does suck when your special teams really drags you down. I mean, if they had like a slightly better special teams, if it was mid-pack, like this Steelers offense would be even more deadly if you're shutting down further down the field.
And not just that, but you also have to consider the drives that the Steelers have gotten to start in opposing territory, because we haven't seen that much this year. I mean, remember, I can't remember, I think it was it was something like the Steelers have started 8 drives in opposing territory, and 2 of them have come from Roosevelt Nix. He blocked a punt, and then he punched the ball out against Carolina. So that means you have 6 others where, the defense made a play, which just is not good.
Yeah, just because I'm actually reading about that now. 2 of them came against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers too. The 2, like that's 2 in one game out of the 8. So like you're left with 6 for the other 15 games. So that's absolutely just terrible and not good at all. That's really, really bad. And I didn't even think about that.
Just really makes you wonder. But we'll finish up the preview with this game in a little bit. But let's get to the other big game Steelers fans are going to be paying attention to, Austin. The Browns at the Ravens, the same time as the Steelers-Bengals game at 4:25. Baltimore is a 5.5-point favorite. I brought back my friend John Gehring to talk a little bit about this game. So without further ado, let's reintroduce John to the show, and let's listen to the interview where he talks about the Browns and Ravens game. Hello and welcome back to a special edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. John Kier hosting, and I've brought back a good friend of mine, John Gehring from 89.1 The Point. You might remember having him on a couple times earlier this season for both the Steelers-Browns games this season. John, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you on.
Well, thanks, John. It's really good to be back here.
And certainly not something I anticipated the last time we spoke. I know we were talking kind of jokingly about how little a chance the Steelers and Browns could potentially meet again, and they will not. However, the oddity is that the Steelers season, as far as a potential playoff berth, resides not only in them needing to beat the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday, but they will also need the Cleveland Browns to defeat the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore at the same time on Sunday. So very, very surprising, something that you probably would not have believed had we been told this at the beginning of the season. But, what's even more surprising is that the Browns are playing as well as they are right now, and they have a legitimate chance.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, as much as I love the Browns, I will have to admit that I think it's the more unlikely outcome that the Browns beat the Ravens than the Bengals beating the Steelers, the Steelers beating the Bengals, I should say, because the Steelers should hopefully easily beat the Bengals, especially without Andy Dalton and A.J. Green. But it's certainly kind of exciting to actually be playing in a game late in the season that matters, not for us, but for somebody, for the Ravens and Steelers, it matters a lot. So that's exciting.
And speaking of exciting, the Browns have kind of enkindled a very exciting atmosphere of late. Let's talk a little bit about the changes that have come about this team. The last time we spoke, the Steelers were about to play the Browns. They beat the Browns, I believe it was, 33-18 in Pittsburgh. And I believe, right after that game, the Browns fired head coach Hugh Jackson and offensive coordinator Todd Haley. And we can talk a bit about what's happened since then in a moment. But can you just talk to me about kind of the surprise in the moment that you had when you heard that not just Jackson was fired, but also Todd Haley?
I guess I was a little bit surprised that they did it right there and then, but it was sort of the inevitable result based on, well, the past 2 seasons going 1-31, and then the beginning of this season where, the Browns looked a lot more promising, but they still lost a lot of games that they should have won. And oftentimes it came down to coaching decisions, and that was Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley. It was kind of surprising that they fired both of them at the same time. I personally thought Haley was doing an all right job as offensive coordinator, though I wasn't a big fan. But Hugh Jackson as a head coach was just incompetent in so many ways. And you heard in his post-game press conference after one loss, they asked him why he didn't call a timeout, and he honestly answered that he didn't know he had a timeout. So while I appreciate the honesty, the incompetency was just so obvious, and I was very relieved when they decided to move on.
So obviously, with the shocking move of not just firing your head coach, but also the offensive coordinator, that meant the defensive coordinator, Greg Williams, has become the interim head coach, and new offensive coordinator Freddie Kitchens is calling the plays with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. And after a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs the following week, the Browns are a shocking, maybe shocking in your eyes, but shocking to me at least. They're 5-1 since week 10, and their only loss coming to a playoff team in the Houston Texans. They've looked like a much better football team of late. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the change that Kitchens and Williams have instilled in this team and just kind of how they've responded to it?
Well, yeah, even right away in that Kansas City game, despite the loss at home, you could see the difference in attitude and culture, and I like the play calling better. It was more heavy on the rushing attack with Nick Chubb, who has been one of the most surprising rookies this year, one of the leading rookie rushers, actually. And I certainly liked just the culture of the team. It was obvious that something had changed that week. Even though they lost, they came right back the next week and strung together some wins. That loss in Houston, wasn't the greatest, but yeah, it's Houston. And some of these wins that we've seen over Cincinnati last week was especially impressive. The score is a little bit deceiving as to just how dominant the Browns were. Going to Denver and holding off the Broncos late, despite a furious rally and a desperate Broncos team. That was a great win as well. And just so far, I've really been impressed with what Greg Williams has done at head coach. He started by changing the culture, but it's certainly a lot more than that. There's a lot of the X's and O's come into play as well. A more aggressive play calling that focuses on the rushing attack, but also isn't afraid to throw one deep once in a while off of play action, and a much more aggressive defense as well. You can certainly tell that Greg Williams is the head coach of this team because the defense, the blitz packages are a lot more, there's a lot more of them to begin with, and they use them with a lot more frequency. The aggressiveness and culture of this team has just completely changed, and it's paid off.
Some of the culture change has certainly been because of Greg Williams, but how much of it do you also attribute to the number 1 overall pick, Baker Mayfield, who I wouldn't say he's necessarily flying under the radar, but maybe with all the great offensive talents at quarterback that we've seen this season and the air attacks that we've seen throughout the NFL, people seem to kind of almost be forgetting about Baker Mayfield in the sense that he's not lighting it up per se, but people have taken a notice to the fact that he has really helped, and his attitude has kind of changed the way people are looking at the Browns. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, statistically, Mayfield is not among the top quarterbacks in football, but that's exactly why he is energizing the team and really the whole organization. And that's because of his unselfishness, his leadership skills and unselfishness. When he came in as a college kid from Oklahoma, you kind of saw a little bit of that Johnny Manziel sort of the running quarterback style and the sort of cocky appearance on the field and everything. But that has totally taken a back seat since Baker has come to the NFL, and I don't think he was nearly as immature as Manziel, even when he was in college. But, of course, understandably so, there was the speculation of possibly a lack of maturity. But when he came in, he carries himself so confidently, and he does have that swagger, sort of like Manziel did, but it's humble, and it's more in an effort to improve the team as a whole. And that's what you see from him. And statistically, he isn't among the top quarterbacks. He's actually right around the middle of the pack in most stats. But then again, he didn't play the first 4+ games, so that's a good point too. But he certainly has changed the culture of this team because of his unselfishness and because of just his talent, his ability to escape the pocket when necessary, but also his ability to stand in the pocket and make some throws. And it's not like escaping the pocket is his first instinct, and that's something that I really like about him too. But overall, his leadership just gets the guys around him to want to play for him, and it makes everybody just excited about him because he's a team-first guy, and he's really carried this team, not statistically, but with his leadership to where they are right now, which is a 500 record, surprisingly.
And a very impressive turnaround at that, the 500 record being 7-7-1. Due to the nature of the tie, the Browns cannot finish with an even record of 500, unless if they tie the Ravens somehow, which I wouldn't expect. But the Browns have had something to play for up until, I believe, were they officially eliminated from the playoffs last week or 2 weeks ago?
Well, last week they were officially eliminated before their game because of the Saturday night games. Tennessee's victory over Washington officially eliminated them, so Sunday's game unfortunately didn't mean anything. But yeah, a couple weeks ago they were still in it.
So you think about that, it's been a while since the Browns had played meaningful football through Week 15, and they still came out with the win in Week 16. They don't have anything to play for as far as playoffs go this week, but they have the chance to play for a winning record, and that it would be the first, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're first since 2007. So you can bet that So you can bet they're going to come out motivated and they're going to want to try to beat the Ravens. Can you talk about what a winning record would mean for the Browns?
Oh, well, you can already tell because last week they were eliminated before their game, and they still came out with an incredible amount of energy. It was the first sellout at First Energy Stadium in a long time, and yes, it was against a rival in the Cincinnati Bengals who were struggling, but man, the energy in that stadium last week was unbelievable for a team with a losing record trying to just get back to 500 in a basically meaningless game. Sure didn't feel like it, but this week coming in with a chance to finish the season off with a winning record and also to be playing one of their rivals in the Baltimore Ravens with a chance to eliminate them from playoff contention, yes, it's true that the Steelers are also kind of the Browns' rivals, and winning and putting the Steelers in, assuming they beat the Bengals, wouldn't be the greatest thing as far as many Browns fans are concerned. But I think a lot of us, including myself, would say that we despise the Ravens a lot more than the Steelers. So playing them as like our ultimate rivals, since they're the ones who took the team away from us in '95, that is certainly something worth playing for besides the winning record. But yeah, even just the winning record itself, first time in 11 years, that would be unbelievable.
So we've set the stage for the game now. Let's turn our attention to the actual contest. The Ravens have come in, as I mentioned, they've won now 5 of their last 6 games, their only loss being an overtime loss to Kansas City. They've kind of had a remade offense as well with their first-round quarterback in Lamar Jackson, the final pick of the first round, where Baker Mayfield was the first pick of the first round. Jackson is similar yet really different than Baker Mayfield. He's actually really a unique quarterback in many different aspects. He's kind of like Tim Tebow, but he's also different, and he has more ability when it comes to throwing the football. The Ravens haven't won these games in a pretty fashion, but they play with dominant defense, and they have an identity now. And as far as their offense goes, it's definitely running the football with Lamar Jackson. So I'm guessing if you're Greg Williams and you're looking at the defense, How do you try to slow down this rushing attack?
Well, certainly you have to start by keeping containment, and that's the most important thing, I think, against Lamar Jackson. The linebackers really have to keep an eye on him because not only is he looking to throw the ball down the field, but in broken play situations, he sure knows how to get out of the pocket and improvise and sort of burn some defenses for being so disciplined to the receivers who are running the routes and the running back who are blocking. So I think when he uses that against defenses have to realize that he is that threat too. And we obviously know that, but sometimes it's hard to actually put that into a game plan and for the linebackers to actually realize that, well, that we have to be spies on the quarterback. And certainly, hopefully, Joe Schobert, who's sort of the leader of that linebacker corps, will be able to stop him on those scrambles. But besides that, yeah, they like to run the ball a lot and play defense. That's their formula for winning these past 5 out of 6 games. And the Browns have been really good against stopping the run in general, especially the past 5 weeks, stopping anybody's rushing attack, whether it be Denver's. That was very impressive how they held them to under 100 yards. And Cincinnati last week, who didn't really have anybody but a rushing attack out in Joe Mixon. So I'm really impressed with how the Browns defense has stopped any offensive rushing attack. But I think it's going to be a challenge against a dual threat quarterback like Jackson, and they need to be sure to stay disciplined against him and make sure that he doesn't burn them, especially in broken plays.
How much does Lamar Jackson's arm concern you? Like, how worried are you about it?
I'm more worried about it than I am, or than I would be and was about Joe Flacco's arm, to be honest. But I still see him as a young player in Jackson. I mean, that could make some mistakes that the Browns are going to have to put a lot of pressure on him and try to exploit the inexperience that he has, because you've seen him still make a few errant passes, and that the Browns can use to their advantage. But his skill is certainly without question. I think that he will be able to find some receivers for some big plays in this game. That's inevitable, especially against the Browns secondary. That's why he concerns me so much, because the Browns secondary, they've been better the past couple weeks, just like the entire team has, but still, you have to consider them as one of the weakest, if not the weakest spots on this team. Certainly young and inexperienced, and they've been burned a couple times, especially on 3rd and long, which has really hurt them. So I think even if the Browns are able to stop the run and get the Ravens into 3rd and long situations, they aren't out of the water yet, largely due to Lamar Jackson. And I'm definitely concerned about what he can do with his arm.
Couple more questions about the defense. One, Lamar Jackson, for all the good he has done, he does have a propensity to turn the football over, as we've seen, not even just forced errors. Sometimes on the quarterback exchange with the running back, we've seen some fumbles. And we know that the Browns defense this year has been great at forcing these kinds of turnovers. Can you tell me kind of what your magic number is for turnovers that the Browns defense will need to force on Sunday, and just overall how many points you think they can allow? What's the magic number for points against?
Well, they're going to allow 20 points, I think, at least. And I think anything under that 24 mark would be a win for the Browns defense, because this is a really talented Ravens offense. And that's concerning because the Ravens defense is so good. So running into this good of a defense, yet also this talented of an offense who has success in the vertical passing game, is going to be a challenge for the Browns, and that's why I'm having a hard time being too optimistic about this game. But I would say that, as you said, the turnovers, big opportunity for the Browns in this one. And if they force 4 or more, I think they're going to have a chance to get some short fields, turn that into some points themselves, and sort of do what their opponents have been doing to them all year long, almost like cheating, making a 20-yard field for their offense, or even taking one all the way to the house. Certainly, that's what they're going to need. That's why I would say 4 turnovers at least to win this game.
So with that being the case, it doesn't sound like you're very confident about the Browns' offense. An improved unit to be sure, but they only put up 12 points in overtime against the Ravens in Cleveland last time. How do you think Baker's going to fare with his first game in Baltimore?
I think this game's going to be a lot different in pretty much every way. That game was really bizarre, to be honest. It almost ended in a tie, actually. A Greg Joseph field goal in the time expired, actually, in overtime was the only reason it didn't end in a tie, and the Browns won 12-9. And that field goal barely cleared the crossbar. It's one of the ugliest kicks I've ever seen, yet one of the most beautiful at the same time because it beat the Ravens. But I think that this game's going to be a lot different. I think the offenses are going to have some more success in this one. Instead of playing a completely different offense led by Flacco, the Browns are going to have to deal with Jackson, who's a lot more dynamic, and they're going to have to do it with a little bit of a beat-up secondary that isn't very good to begin with. So even though the Browns are healthy mostly on defense, we've seen their secondary get beat up a little bit, including Denzel Ward these past couple weeks. So I would certainly be more concerned about the Ravens' offense in comparison to last week, and I'd be more optimistic about the Browns' offense, actually, believe it or not, with the way they've been playing lately and the emergence of Rashard Higgins, who's played great, Nick Chubb, who's just been unbelievable in that offensive line, giving him some room to run, and as well as David Njoku stepping up a little bit as well, and a veteran receiving core in Jarvis Landry, Rashard Perriman, and others. I'd be more optimistic about this Browns offense as a whole, but at the same time would be more concerned about the Ravens defense, who come in dominating in recent games, and they've certainly showed that they've found a formula for success, and their aggressiveness and the way they rush the passer, yet stay disciplined in the secondary, that is a recipe for success, and I'm really concerned about what this defense is going to show us this week.
A lot of NFL experts say that the Ravens have the most complicated defense in the NFL. With the Browns being such a, they're a team that has a young quarterback, like many that are in that same situation. They're a run-heavy team, and we've seen Nick Chubb be really a fantastic player, not just as a runner, but also as a receiver, too, this year. He's going to be important, but how likely do you think it is the Browns are going to be able to establish the run, and if they can't do it, how less likely is it that they're going to be able to win?
Well, I hate to say it, but I don't see them establishing a run in a dominant sort of way like they did last week, running the ball about 70% of their offensive plays in the first half. I don't see that sort of rushing dominance early in this game against the Ravens. The Ravens are just too good. I don't think we'll be able to just beat them up front. Certainly they have the advantage up front, actually. But with that said, I don't think that's going to disqualify Cleveland's chances in this game. I certainly think that they can spread the ball around and still have some success against this Ravens defense. They can't just run the ball twice and throw the ball on 3rd and 8 every single possession, because that's just not going to work against Baltimore's defense. They're going to have to pretty much empty the playbook, which is what they're going to have to do in this last week of the season, and spread the ball around. That's the most important thing as well with the vertical passing game, and Baker is just going to have to make some plays with his legs and extend some plays and improvise a little bit. So I think that's very possible that it can happen. And I think the Browns can win without establishing a running game. Certainly would make it easier if Chubb went for 150 plus in this one, but I just don't see that happening.
So you talked about the defense's magic number for points against being right around 24 and turnovers being around 4. Conversely, for the offense, I guess that means they're going to need to score around 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals, give or take, right?
Yeah, pretty much. what I'm hoping and what makes me slightly optimistic about this game, despite seeing the Ravens looking a lot better on paper, is that the Browns can get some timely turnovers in positive territory, maybe even in the red zone, and turn it into easier points so it's not all on their offense. Like, they've had to run a lot of long fields recently. They've been successful in doing so. I don't think they're going to be successful in that in long 15-plus play drives that go for 90-plus yards against the Ravens. I don't think that's going to happen. But if they can get some short fields, I like our chances to stay competitive in this one. And I think, that magic number of about 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals, give or take, that certainly is attainable with the help of defense and special teams.
Without those turnovers, though, how many points do you think the Browns offense puts up? 17?
Realistically about 13. I don't think the Browns, if they start on the 25-yard line every possession, the 20 or 25-yard line, I don't think they get past midfield on more than 25% of their possessions. That's honestly what I think. Just because this offense is built on momentum, and they aren't going to be able to get as much momentum, especially on the road. That's a factor in this game as well, when they can't establish their running game. And that doesn't mean they can't hit a few big plays and score some points, but without an edge in field position or a break from the defense or special teams that gives them a good opportunity inside the Ravens' red zone, I just don't see how they can possibly put up more than a couple of touchdowns at most on long fields.
And the other thing about momentum is that's what the Ravens offense is all about, is not letting you get momentum and get a rhythm, because they are such a good ball control offense. So we've kind of laid it out here. Obviously, there's a lot on the line for the Ravens, and the Browns have a reason to play for this game.
Right.
It's going to be tough, but I guess, how do you see this one breaking out? What do you give me a final score prediction?
All right. Well, I think that this game is going to be a magical one for the Browns, and that sounds a little bit ridiculous because I know we've kind of all laid it out, and it sounds like the Ravens have the advantage, and what scares me is that they're at home too, so that's kind of rough. But, there's something magical about this Browns team right now, and in past weeks and years, the Browns have found ways to lose, but the culture has done a complete 180, and therefore I think the team will in late game situations as well. So I don't know if this is false hope or what, but I certainly think that the Browns are going to come away with one of these really tight games that could really go either way, but I'm going to say a 26-23 victory over the Ravens, and a season sweep as well.
So you heard it here first on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. John says, don't worry, Steelers fans. You got a reason to hope right now. The Browns can come away with this win. John, I really appreciate you coming on. And a couple more quick questions. Just one. Greg Williams, is he back as the full-time head coach next year?
I think he is, absolutely. I was skeptical at first, but what he's done these past few weeks, you can't replace that by anybody coming in who is not currently on the staff.
And I know it's a long way from now, but playoffs have to be at least a wild card has to be within reach next year, right?
Oh, sure. And the thing is, I think possibly, of course, and the NFL changes every year, so you really can't judge it based on this year. But I look at next year, and I think the division might be easier to win than getting one of the wild card slots, because, like in the Steelers situation, they can only win the division. They can't win the wild card, so they can't earn one of the last wild card spots. So it speaks to the strength and depth of the AFC, as well as, I guess you would say, the relative weakness of the AFC North. And next year, I'm certainly optimistic about the Browns' chances to compete with the Steelers and Ravens.
All right, John, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Didn't expect to have you on a third time this year, but we always appreciate having you come on, and we're looking forward to bringing you back next year. But good luck to the Browns on Sunday.
Thank you, and good luck to the Steelers, too. You know, just so the Ravens miss out on the playoffs, I certainly would be rooting for the Steelers to beat the Bengals. I think they will. And hopefully we can get it done for you guys, and you guys can go back to the playoffs again.
All right. Thank you so much, John. Take care.
You too, John. Thank you.
All right. So with that, Austin, John did predict a win for the Browns, even though he talked about the disadvantages they had. He really felt like they just have a swagger about them with the way they've been playing lately. I'm still not super. I don't know if I necessarily agree per se as far as the likelihood of it happening, or he did make a point that he didn't think it was likely, but I don't think I'm going to straight out predict that the Browns are going to win. But it's going to be tough either way.
It really is. It's going to be a tough game. I really wish Denzel Ward could have made it back for this one because I felt like he's been a really good rookie for the Browns this year. But, I mean, he's out, obviously. And, I mean, the Baltimore Ravens aren't really banged up at all. They only got questionable players, no out players. It's going to be huge. I like what John said about their striker because it's true. They got something going. They all just want to beat everyone up. They want to have a winning record. And do you know if the Browns win and the Giants lose on Sunday, the Browns would have the better record over the past two seasons than the Giants?
Wow, that would be something. Oh, man.
Yeah, they obviously went 0-16 last season. They still have a better record. I mean, they want to play for a winning season. Like, why not? I mean, I guess I could understand wanting to play for a draft position, but none of those guys want that. They want to win. They want to disrupt the Ravens' playoff. They want to try and mess it up. I mean, I don't know how much because obviously it's just another division rival they would be sending, but I feel like when I played football all these years ago, there's a season where our team was completely out of it, but we could have knocked out the last guys, and obviously it's a little different, but we played as hard as we could. We knocked out some other people out of the playoff when our team sucked, and it was one of the greatest feelings ever. It was the best we could do with what we had, and obviously we don't have a draft. This was middle school, but it's just I don't know. I feel like when you can do that to one of your own rivals, like I feel like that's unprecedented, and they're coming in with that swagger. Like I said, Myles Garrett is coming in with the possibility of I forget what record he could get if he gets a few sacks. I think it's the Browns single season sack record, but I'm not exactly sure. I know he could set a record this game. So there's just a lot at stake. I mean, Jarvis Landry said he wants to win. They're talking about how the history of how moving the former Browns from Baltimore was hurtful at the time. They're trying to make everything to piss the Browns off and play at their best. So, I mean, there is hope. And, I mean, the Browns have been playing really well. The Browns' defense is one of the top in the league this year. And so there's a chance. We just haven't seen a team that's able to stop Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards in their running attack. And it's really annoying to me, actually, because every week, I look at them and I'm like, there's no way they can keep it up. And you know what they do? They keep it up. They keep doing it. No teams can't stop them, and I'm not sure why. I keep looking at it. I don't really understand. And maybe the Browns are a good defense for it. I feel like the Browns have been pretty good against the rush this year. I feel like their defense could be the one to finally shut down the Ravens because, I mean, no other team that they face since Lamar Jackson started has really been able to shut it down enough where the Ravens had to play from behind, at least not with the Ravens' defense being where it's at. But I'm out here hoping that Baker Mayfield just dices up that defense somehow, plays with the swagger he's been playing with, and does the Steelers a favor. And I'm going to say this now. If Baker Mayfield wins on Sunday and the Steelers make it to the playoffs and then go to the Super Bowl and win, I will get a Baker Mayfield tattoo. And that's a promise. That's I mean, it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely, but I'm making this promise on the podcast that if Baker wins, Steelers make it to the playoffs, and then win the Super Bowl, I will get a Baker Mayfield tattoo somewhere on my body, probably my leg. But yeah.
I'm going to ask
That's
that you...
say about the Browns-Ravens game.
I'm going to ask that you make that a pinned tweet on the profile, so if the Steelers do make the playoffs, we can have that there for reference point. But in any case, yeah, it's not super likely, but it's not impossible either. I feel like the Browns certainly have a chance, and John talked about this with me. He kind of set the magic number for the points against for the Browns defense, kind of around 24, and he said they're going to need to come up with, he said 4 turnovers, which may seem kind of crazy, but Lamar Jackson has also fumbled the ball a lot this year, and it hasn't just been forced errors, it's been unforced errors, like with just the exchange between him and Gus Edwards. And that's the thing about the Browns defense. They might not statistically be a great unit, but here's what they do well is they take the football away, and we know that Greg Williams has turned up the heat as he typically does. They blitz more than any team in the NFL besides the Steelers, and you know that Greg Williams is going to bring the run blitz all day long. I have to think he's looking at Lamar Jackson and he's saying, I'm not going to let you beat me.
I completely think that. How do I put it? This is always the problem. I feel like the Browns are going to need that many turnovers. I think 4 is the golden number, like he said. And like you said, it's really not that crazy because Lamar Jackson has been fumbling like crazy with their exchange and just in general. And that happens when you have a rushing attack that you mostly rush the entire game. You fumble a lot more than other teams when you're basically rushing for 200 yards a game and then you're only throwing for 150. I mean, last game he actually threw for over 200 for the first time in his career. And that was after me saying I don't trust in his throwing abilities. But, yeah, I think 4 turnovers. If the Browns get 4 turnovers, I'm going to say they win.
I would agree with you. It's not out of the question, but they're going to need to make some plays, and they're going to need to not turn the football over on offense. So I guess at the end of the day, how do you think it's going to turn out?
At the end of the day, I don't have that optimism. I'm always been pessimistic. I think the Browns keep it within 5.5. Baltimore favored by 5.5 points, by the way. I think the Browns keep it with that 5.5, but they don't win. I feel like the Browns are going to try and play with that swagger, but the Ravens' defense is just insane. The Ravens' defense is either the best or like the second best or maybe third best defense in the league. So I'm going to give it to the Ravens, but the Browns keep it within 5. What do you think?
And that defense is even better at home. I'll agree with you. I think this is a field goal game, but at the end of the day, I think the Ravens are a little bit better this time, and they'll eke out a close win over division rival to get to the playoffs. Let's look at the rest of the NFL slate of games for the final time, Austin, this season. So starting with 2 non-playoff teams, the Miami Dolphins and Buffalo Bills. Defensive tackle Kyle Williams of the Bills, his 13th season about to wrap up, has announced he will retire following this game, the end of a great Buffalo Bills career. A shame that it went to waste in Buffalo, for sure, but nonetheless, I think the Bills are going to play inspired with their defensive leader on the way out. I think they beat the Dolphins pretty handily, and as you know, I've not been really crazy about the Dolphins all year.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think the Bills cover here. I feel like the Bills are just like the better team at this point with Josh Allen at the helm, and the Dolphins have just been trending downwards for a while. So we'll see. I think the Dolphins are an interesting team going into the offseason. I think they finally decide to move on from Tannehill this season.
There are changes going on in that organization, indeed. The Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is getting 8 points at home. Aaron Rodgers lobbied for Joe Philbin to be retained as the head coach. Not too sure about that, but there have also been reports that have been also debunked at this time that the Lions wanted to trade Matthew Stafford. Both of these organizations seem like they're in weird spots right now. I think the Packers will cover and win this one pretty handily. I think the Lions are playing for draft position right now.
I didn't even see the reports that Lions were trying to trade Matthew Stafford. That's interesting. At one point, he was the highest paid quarterback in the league, but regardless, I'm going to agree to the Packers covering here. I just feel like the Packers are the better team. The Lions haven't been playing very well all year, so I'm going to pick the Packers to cover.
New York Jets at the New England Patriots. The Patriots somehow managed to look very unimpressive in their win over the Bills last week, yet hold the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs, and all they need to do to ensure another first-round bye is to beat the Jets. They're getting 13.5 in Foxborough. I'm going to take the Jets plus 13.5. I really think Sam Darnold has played well lately, and they've got a good defense. I think they'll keep this one relatively close, but the Patriots will come out with another win.
Yeah, that Texans game from Sam Darnold was really impressive, but I'm still going to pick the Patriots to cover, even though they look really sluggish and they don't look like a Patriots team. They're not looking too hot. At least that's something to look forward to going to the playoffs. I still pick them to cover over the Jets, though.
Panthers at Saints, 2 backup quarterbacks. The Saints getting 7 points as Teddy Bridgewater gets the start. And Taylor Heineke for the Panthers lay the 7 points for the Saints. They're just a better, deeper team with more to play for, even though they are resting their starters.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize Heineke was going to be ready to go. I'm still going to pick the Saints to cover. I think Teddy Bridgewater could be a starter in this league. So basically, to me, I mean, it's obviously a downgrade from Drew Brees, don't get me wrong, but Teddy Bridgewater, I think, could hold his own as a starter on any other team. So I'm gonna pick the Saints to cover here.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Austin, because I was not paying attention. Yeah, Taylor Heineke's on IR, so not that I really would have picked the Panthers anyway, but yeah.
I knew he got hurt. I didn't even know he went to IR. I just didn't think he was playing, but I guess he's not. I don't even know who is starting for the Panthers at this point.
I saw he was hurt, and then he came back. I didn't know that he was getting a chance, or that he had been put on IR. So that.
Yep, me neither.
So that'll be interesting. I'm going to do some research here in a second here, but I believe the quarterback for the Panthers is going to be Garrett Gilbert. I'll double check. In the meantime, you want to lead on the next game?
Yeah, it's the Cowboys at the Giants. The Giants are favored by 6 points. I believe the Cowboys are locked into the 4 seed, so they can't move if they win or lose. Therefore, they're probably going to be playing a lot of their backups. Therefore, the Giants are favored by 6. I'm still going to pick the Cowboys to win outright. I think that the Giants are a very, very, very bad team. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys to win outright. What do you have for this game?
I have the Cowboys winning outright as well. They're just a better football team, and the Giants are not very good, even though they have gone on a much better stretch of games the middle to late end of the season than they were at the beginning of the season. I still don't think they're that good. So the quarterbacks for the Panthers are Kyle Allen, an undrafted rookie from Houston, and Garrett Gilbert, a 2-year pro out of SMU. So either way, not a whole lot going on.
Yep, I'll take Teddy Bridgewater any day.
Agreed. The Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, both teams trying to mercifully end their seasons. The Falcons getting 1.5 on the road. I'll take the Falcons, lay the 1.5.
I'm going to agree. Falcons cover.
Fitzmagic seems like such a long time ago.
It really does. Really, really does.
Wrapping up the 1 o'clock games, Jaguars at Texans, Houston minus 6.5. The Texans have a lot to play for. If they lose, they are losing the division crown. That's as simple as it gets. So I think the Texans win big here. This is a huge game for them.
Yeah, the Texans have looked sluggish, but not like sluggish enough like a team that just lost to the Redskins, led by Josh Johnson. So I'm going to pick the Texans to cover here. And you want to know something interesting? The Titans can get the number 2 seed if everything goes their way this next on Sunday.
Wow, that's depressing.
It really is depressing when you think about it. But I mean, they need a lot. They need the Texans to lose. They need the Patriots to lose. They need the Chiefs to win, Chargers to lose, and just a whole bunch of other things. I think they need a strength of victory tiebreaker with someone else too. Obviously, they would need to win against the Colts, but yeah, they could get the number 2 seed.
That's very bizarre, but in any case, we're into the 4 o'clock games now. Chargers at Broncos, LA minus 6.5. Give me the Broncos plus that 6.5 spread there. They beat the Chargers earlier this year, and Denver is always a tough place to play. And I'm not sold on the Chargers like I was last month.
I'm going to pick the Chargers to cover, and while I'm not sold on the Chargers, I just think the Broncos are a very bad football team. So I'm going to pick the Chargers to cover.
You watched that Monday night game last week between the Raiders and Broncos. By the way, probably the last game to ever be played in Oakland, and it just made you question again like how the Steelers lost to both of those teams.
I actually didn't watch it all. I just know that the Broncos lost pretty bad.
Well, that's all I was asking myself, so you didn't miss much. Raiders at Chiefs. Chiefs minus 14. They've been looking sluggish of late. They're coming off a loss to the Seahawks in Seattle last week. The last time these two teams played, the Raiders kept it within 7, so I'll take the Raiders plus the 14. They've been playing a lot better the second half of the season, including a win over a very, very sad Steelers team as well.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Raiders plus 14 for that first thing you mentioned, that they kept it within 7 against the Chiefs the first time. I think they can do it again. I'm going to pick the Raiders plus 14.
49ers at the Rams. The Niners have been playing everyone tough the second half of the season. Nick Mullins has been a solid find at quarterback. I don't know what they'll do with him going forward, but he's a nice guy to have. Rams are still 10-point favorites, but I'll take the Niners plus 10. Those NFC West games are always bizarre.
Yeah, I'm going to pick 49ers plus 10 and echo your reason again. They're just bizarre games. I mean, Todd Gurley's been ruled out again. I mean, C.J. Anderson looked pretty good last week, but I'm not going to bet on him keeping that up. So I'm going to pick the 49ers within 10.
Bears at Vikings. The Vikings season is on the line. They need to win to stay in the playoff hunt here. If they lose with an Eagles win, they'll be out. So they're getting 5.5, which seems like a lot to me, but I'll take the Bears plus the 5.5. I think the Vikings are going to play with a bit of energy here, and the Bears will know that the Rams are playing the 49ers and will probably pull their starters at some point in this game. So I'll take the Bears plus 5.5, but the Vikings win.
I'm going to pick the Bears to win outright. I think that the Bears are the better team, and because the 49ers have been playing strong, I feel like the Bears could have a reason to keep playing in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Bears win outright here.
Cardinals at Seahawks. Both teams trying to get to the end of their year. I believe the Seahawks clinched the playoffs, didn't they?
Yep, the Seahawks clinched playoffs.
So they are in. They're still getting 13 points. I'm still going to take Seattle to cover. I think they absolutely wallop the Cardinals, who are just looking forward to the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think that the Cardinals are just a very bad team. So Seahawks cover.
Eagles at Redskins. Philly is -7 on the road. Give me the Eagles and Nick Foles to cover, and the Redskins can finally start looking forward to next year.
Again, Eagles cover. It's just Nick Foles has just been playing. I don't know why, but Nick Foles in these situations just plays out of his mind. So I'm going to pick Nick Foles to win here against Josh Johnson.
Sunday night cap, the final game of the regular season, the Colts and Titans, an elimination game. Indy's getting 3.5 on the road. I've gone against the Titans all year. I'm actually going to take them to win here.
I'm going to pick them to lose. I think the Colts cover here. I just feel like the Colts are a way better team. I mean, the Colts have been injured all year, but right now the Titans just lost Jarrell Casey, who's been having a really good year. And, I mean, Mariota's not going to be at full 100%. Mariota's been banged up all year, basically. He has Stinger, so I'm going to say that the Colts win here because I like Andrew Luck better than I like Marcus Mariota.
Blaine Gabbert, the GOAT, though. I'll never forget I have his jersey.
Blaine Gabbert is the GOAT. You're right.
$5 at Goodwill. Best $5 I ever spent. It's hanging up somewhere. I don't know where it is. But in any case, let's get back to the game at hand, Steelers at Bengals, because obviously no matter what happens in the Browns and Ravens game, the Steelers need to win this game in order to make the playoffs. So give me an X factor on offense and defense and your key for the offense and defense for the Steelers to win.
Well, for offense, my X factor is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. With no practice for AB all week, it's not looking good for him, despite being marked as questionable. If he doesn't play, it's time to see how Juju would be as the number one receiver, and it would be up against a pretty hard matchup in William Jackson. For defense, it's L.J. Fort. I feel like he's going to get a lot of playing time with Vince Williams out, and we all know he's not the best run stopper, but he's going to have to step it up in this game against an offense that is now predominantly reliant on the run. And, so I feel like L.J. Fort's going to be the difference maker here. Now, I wait only because I wanted you to give your keys first. So what are your offensive X factors and your keys and your X factors? I'm sorry.
All right, so I'll go with offense. It's James Conner, and then just don't turn the football over. My X factor, James Conner, he's going to be playing for the first time in almost a month, and even though I expect him to be on a bit of a snap count, kind of splitting carries with Jalen Samuels a bit, I think his presence can reinvigorate the ground game, and they'll have another big day like we saw earlier this season against the Bengals. And as we talked about, their defense is one of the worst in league history. You have advantages everywhere across the field, so the only way they keep you under 30 or maybe even 40 is by forcing turnovers, so just don't turn it over. And then on defense, I'm going with T.J. Watt, and the key is to keep Joe Mixon under 100 scrimmage yards. Watt has developed into a fantastic weapon for the Steelers' defense this year. He's playing some of the best football I've seen from an outside linebacker for the Steelers in years. And he's going up against what is, in essence, a third-string right tackle. So he should have a big day. And the key for Mixon, he is their offense. We talked about it. They have no Andy Dalton, no A.J. Green, no Tyler Boyd, no Tyler Eifert, no Tyler Kroft. You stop him, you're fine. They're not going to use Giovanni Bernard for some reason, and Jeff Driscoll is not going to throw it deep on you. So if you make him throw it 30, 35 times, you're golden.
Yeah, I'm basically going to echo both your points, because for offense, it was just don't turn the football over. There's no way the Bengals can win if they don't get any turnovers. Then for defense, it's essentially the same thing. Just stop the run, force them to throw. Just force them to throw the entire game. If the Bengals end up having to throw, like you said, like 35 times, it means they lost. It means they probably lost bad. So those are my keys.
For bold predictions, I'll jump right into it. I think Eli Rogers is going to catch 2 touchdowns in this game. I think Jalen Samuels and James Conner combined for 3 touchdowns of their own and 200 yards of scrimmage, and T.J. Watt has 3 sacks and an interception.
For me, my first one is AB84 doesn't play, and Juju Smith-Schuster goes over 200 yards. Then L.J. Fort gets a pick and a sack in this game. And then my third bold prediction is Joe Mixon is kept under 45 yards rushing.
All right, so we talked about this game, offense, defense, special teams. How you see this one breaking out? Give me your closing statements and final score.
Well, I think the Steelers are going to win this one. I think that because of the way the Steelers play games, I think that the Bengals keep it at 14.5, but just barely. I think the Steelers win 31-17 here. What do you got?
I am going to have the Steelers covering in this one. I have them winning this one 34-13. The Steelers are way more talented than the Bengals, and they have far less injury concerns. At the end of the day, I think we're going to see a dominant win from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're just going to see that. And as fans, we're going to sit at home and wonder, man, what happened if a team like this played the way they've played today all season? And it's just going to make fans more upset if they don't make the playoffs. So I'll have the Steelers winning, but we also both had the Steelers missing out on the playoffs due to the Ravens winning over the Cleveland Browns. So let's move on to a quick concluding aspect here. This could be the last game for a lot of different Steelers here. So let's kind of go over a bunch of guys. Why don't you tell me real quick whether you think this player is playing their last game or not, and how likely you think they do come back if you do think they're going to be back. So we'll start first with players with contracts expiring, and then we'll go other players that have more than 1 year left. So first, give me running back Stephen Ridley. Is he coming back? Is this it?
No chance. Absolute zero. He's not coming back. What do you think?
He's getting cut. Xavier Grimble.
Also cut. I like Bucky Hodges. What do you think?
I think he is going to be gone as well, but he'll be back for training camp. Jordan Dangerfield, he's a free agent after this.
I think he comes back. What do you think?
I think they bring him back for training camp as well. Mike Hilton, this is really kind of obvious. The question is just how much do you sign him for?
Oh, that's a hard question. I'm not very good what with salaries. I mean, cornerbacks are paid a lot. I mean, he's a slot corner, but I mean, still, I have no idea what Mike Hilton would come back for.
But I think he does come back. How about reserve guard B.J. Finney? I think he comes back.
I think B.J. Finney comes back. I think B.J. Finney should be the starting guard next year.
Eli Rogers, I want him back too.
I think Eli Rogers comes back. I agree.
Daniel McCullers, jury's still out on me for this one. He's better than he was at this point last year. Do what you did this past offseason. Bring him in, just kind of a prove-it thing. That's my view on it.
I think Daniel McCullers comes back because the team loves him for whatever reason. I mean, for this season, he actually had probably his best season to date. So I think he comes back.
Jordan Berry.
Jordan Berry, based on last season, he's coming back.
There's no one else that can take his spot right now. Anthony Chickalo. This one's kind of interesting. I think he might be gone.
I think he's gone too. I completely agree. I feel like because he was a free agent for a while this past season, like no team really was picking him up, and then the Steelers were like, "All right, we'll take you." So I think he's gone.
I think he might be back for the preseason, but I think Ola Adeni will surpass him. Matt Filer's an interesting free agent coming up. I think you have to re-sign him.
Yeah, I think you got to keep Matt Filer. I mean, Charles Hawkins has been hurt his entire career, and I mean, Marcus Gilbert has been hurt a lot the past 2 or 3 seasons, and I think Matt Filer's played excellent football as the starting right tackle, so I think you got to pay him.
What about LJ Fort? He might be due a raise, but is he really worth it?
I'm going to say so. I feel like he's a pretty solid special teamer. Well, it depends on the price tag, though, but I do think ultimately he does come back.
I think you have to bring him back. I don't think you have any other choice just because there's nobody else there. L.T. Walton.
I'm going to say no. I think Casey Sales or Levon Hook surpasses him this next preseason.
Yeah, I think his tenure is coming to a close. Here's a really interesting one. Jesse James, the number 2 tight end.
I am so conflicted on this one. It's really dependent on the price tag because, like, a lot of me says I want him back, but based on, like, how many tight ends in the draft, like, there's gems found late, I don't know. Like, it's really going to depend on the price tag that Jesse James wants. I think he's going to find work regardless, but it's going to be interesting. I'm going to ultimately say he does come back, but it's really dependent on the price tag. What do you think?
I think the Steelers need to sign him quickly. If they don't sign him, I think he's gone. I think you let him test the market, he'll sign with somebody else, even if it's not a big deal. I want to see the only position along the offense I could say I really want to see the depth upgraded, besides maybe guard, is tight end through the draft. I mean,
yeah, they could definitely do that. I don't know. I still like Bucky Hodges. He's chilling.
That's true. That is also true. But in any case, I think you bring him back, but we will see. Cody Sensabaugh, I don't want him back, but I think you need him back for depth purposes. You definitely can't have him be your starter again.
I don't think he's coming back. I think the Steelers are going to address this position in free agency.
See, that's a problem, though. There aren't many good free agent cornerbacks coming up.
I think that the Steelers make a run for injured Ronald Darby.
Ronald Darby. There are a couple of names that are interesting. One is at slot corners, Darquez Denard.
No, I'm not a fan of that.
No, not at all.
No.
What about what's his name? Bradley Roby from the Broncos.
Bradley Roby's interesting. I think Bradley Roby. Bradley Roby was better as a slot corner too, though. That's the problem. I mean, when he was behind Chris Harris and Akeem Talib, that's when he was really solid. Now this year, when he was like the number 2 and now the number 1, it's just you see what the Broncos are letting up. The Broncos are letting up a lot of yards this year, and their defense is just not the same. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan because I mean I still like Mike Hilton in the slot. I think he's the best option to play as the slot corner. I don't know. I guess it is a really poor cornerback free agent market.
Time will tell, but I I think he comes back, but he definitely cannot be the starter. Darius Hayward-Bay, I was on the fence with him last year. He made some bad mistakes early this season that almost had me calling for him to be cut. Those have been cut down in the second half here, but I think he's, again, the yearly, you bring him back for training camp, and he either makes it or he doesn't.
I think he's going to ultimately make it still because of his special teams abilities. I mean, we already know what he is. He's just a special teams player at this point in his career. And I think that they bring him back. I mean, if there was a year for him to not make it, it would have been this past year with Damian Patterson and Marcus Tucker playing. But I think he basically has this position locked up next year.
I'll agree with you. Tyson Alualu.
I think the Steelers bring him back. I mean, as long as he only wants like $3 million again, or even less. But I think he comes back. What do you think?
I think you could do a lot worse as your number 4 defensive lineman. I bring him back if I can. Here's a tough one: Ramon Foster.
I gotta say no. Based on his paycheck that he wants, it sounds like he wants a big payout. I think he's going to be a Tennessee Titan next year.
You have to let him test the market, and then you kind of have to go from there. If you can bring him back within reason, you do it. But you don't do it for longer than like 2 or 3 years, because that's the thing. You don't know how much longer he's going to last. You like to have him back because of the chemistry and because of his consistency, but let's be honest, he could fall off a cliff.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think he's going to take a hometown discount to go to Tennessee. That's why I'm set on it. Because the amount of times he talks about how he wants to be like at home and stuff, like I 100% think he's going to be a Tennessee Titan to be where he was. He was a Vol after all. He went to University of Tennessee. I think he's going to go back to that area.
There is some logic there to be sure. A few more we wanted to highlight. These are guys that have more than 1 year left on their contract but are in danger of being cut. Let's start with kicker Chris Boswell. Do you think he survives the offseason?
It's really going to depend on his contract. I admittedly did not look at how much money it's going to be in dead space to cut him this next year, but I think he's gone. I think I'm not sure he makes it past preseason. It's going to depend, though. There's going to be a kicker battle going into preseason without a doubt.
I think it'll be interesting because you're talking about it's all dependent on the roster bonus that he has and how much it is and when he gets it. So I think it'll be dependent on that. And I think they kept him for this long. I think they'll keep him going into next year, too. Next is Artie Burns. Now, he has 1 more year left on his rookie deal. After this season, I think we can safely assume he's not going to get the 5th-year option, which means he is cheap, but next year probably being his last. It's been a failed season for him. Do you bring him back?
I think so. I think for depth purposes, because he's still cheap this year, you just keep him around and then you let him go after the season, obviously not picking up the 5th-year option. So, yeah. What do you think?
Agreed, and he can still play special teams, so it's not like he's completely useless out there, so that is good. Morgan Burnett, he's been a colossal failure. He's been one of the worst players on the defense this year. Whether it's been not staying healthy, not being athletic enough, or not doing his job, he's just not gotten it done, which is a shame because we all thought that he'd be kind of the guy that could be the glue for this secondary, but he has been anything but that. I think he is 100% gone yesterday.
One and done. Goodbye.
John Bostic, I think, is also a one and done, but less emphatic.
I'm going to say John Bostic comes back. I don't think he's cut after this year. He's still pretty cheap for an inside linebacker. We'll see, though.
Bud Dupree. Now, let me be clear. I think he's coming back, but not for the, like $8.5 million his 5th-year option is. I think he's cut and then re-signed at a cheaper price.
Yeah, I agree. 8.5 is a lot of money to be spent on that man, especially when you have some position. You need to address some spots on defense. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. So is this the last? I guess this is probably, we're gonna assume right now this is the last time we're previewing a Steelers game this season, huh?
Yeah, it could be. It's looking. I'm based on our predictions. It is.
All right, well, let's hope that we're wrong, but in the meantime, Thank you for always thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. You can listen to our episodes on SoundCloud, YouTube, the podcast app on iOS, and you can find us on iTunes as well. Austin, thank you so much for joining me today, and let's hope that this is not the final game of the season for the Steelers.